Hey everybody. Thanks for coming to this. Who likes vampires? Are we into vampires? You didn't know that you'd be playing trivia tonight. We have vampire trivia that is an excuse for me to info dump about things I know about vampires, and then I'm going to read a little bit, and then you can ask questions if you feel like asking questions, if there's anything to ask a question about. Can I ask, does anyone have like a favorite piece of vampire media? Just as an icebreaker, if anyone wants to share. It's too hard. Okay.
The current issue of Vampire TV.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. I feel like Anne Rice would be so mad that people were allowed to do things with her text.
Oh, shit.
And that I think that the things they're doing with the text are good and more creative than her. But also, her books were important to me when I was a little queer freak. They're just depicting, people who are bad people. Which books are allowed to do. Okay, I'm gonna have my mic in my hand so I can flip my head around and stuff. I have this slideshow that is gonna be partly trivia questions for y'all, and you are playing for candy. So there's this Mars fun size bag, and then there's this Choose Happy Fruits Sour Stripes bag. So if you like candy, candy is your incentive to try to answer questions if you want to. I'm gonna open them now so that I don't have to open them later. Hopefully they don't all spill out. Well, there's no one sitting in that chair right there, so I'm going to put them there. Okay, cool. So, has anyone read Carmilla, the 1875 lesbian vampire novel? One of the first vampire novels in English, though it's a good half century after the actual first one. And then earlier than that, before English vampire literature gets started, it's German vampire literature, which is coming from folk tales from southeastern Europe. There's a vampire freakout in the 1730s through 70s in southeastern Europe, probably because of something to do with pellagra, which is a disease, a vitamin deficiency caused by eating non-mixed maltized corn. So as with in many areas of the world, grain was suddenly in the 18th and 19th century started to be mass-produced for export as a cash crop rather than as a sustenance crop. And in Romania and Ukraine and also the Balkans, a ton of people who had been growing other grains were forced to eat corn instead of those grains because the other grains were for export. And because it was from America, nobody knew that you had to nixtamalize corn in order to make it good for you. And if you don't do that, it leaches vitamin B from your bones, and it will slowly kill you if you're only eating corn. For most people, it's not the only thing they're eating, but in this case, a lot of people were dying, and so it's this like slow death where your gums start bleeding and you become more sensitive to sunlight. So in that context, you're trying to figure out why this is happening, and there's like a ghoul explanation. And then Germans are hearing about this, and they're like, I'm going to sort of work these vaguely into my other ideas that I have going on. And so there starts to be sort of undead things going on in German literature in the early 19th century, and like the late 18th century, and then there's like engravings of vampires and people returning from the dead. For some stuff in Germany, it's about like fantasizing about a pagan past as like the Prussian and German identity starts coming together. It makes it into English by the early 19th century. This is an illustration of Carmilla. And as you can see, they did know what gay people were. Carmilla is also interesting because it's about when a teen girl who you've dreamed of since childhood shows up on your doorstep being like, my carriage crashed, can I land with you guys? And then she stays in your house and she's chronically ill and she sort of refuses to leave, and then you're in love with her, but she's also kind of like, has mood swings, and then she hates the sound of church bells, she loves touching your hair, you love touching her hair, you kiss each other on the mouth, and then like she has actually killed another teen girl, and her dad shows up and is like, Carmilla's an evil vampire. But the sort of interesting thing is the sort of like the chronic illness part of it is like it's an anti-lesbian stereotype that like lesbians are going to come into your house and be chronically ill at you, is sort of part of the fear factor of this text. And it's a very anti-lesbian book, but it also is like very sensual. It was serialized, and when I read it, I was like, wow, this is sexier than I expected. This is the first English language novel about vampires called The Vampire with a Y by John Polidori, and it's about Lord Byron sucking. Because John Polidori was employed by Lord Byron as his private doctor, but his sort of hot private doctor who was the same age and traveling Europe with him. And then was present at the like moment where everyone was like ghost stories and Frankenstein gets written out of that. And Byron sort of sketches off a few lines about like a vampire story that he might write, and John Polidori turns into a full novel that's about Lord Byron, basically, because he uses Ruthven as the name for the vampire in this. Ruthven is the alias given to Lord Byron by Byron's ex-girlfriend, who also wrote a novel about Byron sucking. So this is how you know that he's a cool dude, is because two exes of his wrote really scathing novels about how he's like an emotional vampire. He's also a literal vampire. So this is the second book in English about vampires. This is from America, the same year as the first one. So it's not plot-wise similar at all, but vampires are in the water. This comes out same year. This is an alias, so no one knows who exactly really wrote it. And it's about Haitian Revolution and vampires. It's a comedy. It's really insane, and what's really interesting is that it's like, this is like romantic literature serious business. This is like a farce. There's a scene where a lady gets turned into a vampire by this black vampire, and then her 3 husbands return from the dead as well as vampires, because she married 3 times and they all died, and then they all start fighting over her, and then the black vampire gets bored and runs them all through with a stake, like all of them on one stake. And it's like about American anxieties about race. There's a combined vampire and black revolutionary uprising that gets crushed in this book. Whereas it's written when the Haitian Revolution has very much happened. So it's interesting because it's like prefiguring like there will be a successful revolution. It is about a black vampire who is an enslaved boy killed by his master, and then he returns from the dead as a vampire and kills that guy, and then marries his wife, and then has a mixed race child. And then the end of the book, the narrator is like, and I'm descended from the mixed race vampire child, and I have IBS because I'm meant to be drinking blood. And like that's the end of the book. It's crazy. And then there's this like essay that's appended to it about economics. So it's like, it's like the same year, 2 different approaches to vampire literature. I just think that's really interesting. Trivia time. So this trivia is about vampires in propaganda. Warning for racism and misogyny in the propaganda. Also the presence of Nazis in the propaganda, that the propaganda is making fun of the Nazis. So first question, and we've been primed to think about this because of the Uriah Darcy, the Black Vampire novel. What social change was depicted as vampiric in a North Carolina newspaper cartoon in 1898? This is not the cartoon, that's just an image of a North Carolina street. This is for candy. Any guesses? Social change. I'm going to put the candy over here, actually. So when you try to answer a question, even if you get it wrong, you can get a piece of candy. Any guesses? Okay, we're timid right now. I'm gonna again, you have a guess?
Okay, I'm from America, so I feel like I have to guess, but I think that this is the wrong answer. Would it be like with like the Harlem Renaissance, like moving, like the Great Migration, of like moving up?
Good guess, yeah. So it's Reconstruction. The Harlem Renaissance is later. Okay. So this is super racist cartoon of the black vampire, which is just the idea of racial equality. So this is printed in the News and Observer the same year that there's a ton of race riots that target black communities throughout North Carolina. So this is a year of major backlash against racial equality. Reconstruction happens after the Civil War, and for a very brief period, black people and white people have equal voting rights, and it's only challenged by white mobs. There's a rule of law that says black people and white people have equal voting rights. There's a huge explosion of like black people starting businesses. There's big black neighborhoods that are then targeted by race riots in the 1890s. So if you have ever heard of the Wilmington Massacre, they targeted as many as like 300 black people and killed them, and then they burned down this newspaper office that was a black newspaper. So the vampire is being used to target a marginalized population that they're depicting as monstrous in order to build up enough anxiety to get white people who otherwise wouldn't necessarily do this. Maybe there's a ton of racist white people, but like in order to sort of work it up, the vampire is used as this metaphor of marginalized people being monstrous to try to kill people. At the same time, however, it's being used as metaphors for other things. So do we have a guess about what social structure was being depicted as vampirism in France in 1898? Yeah.
I'm guessing
Anti-Semitism is happening. Yes. Not this one.
Is the building the Eiffel Tower?
It is not the Eiffel Tower.
The France building. Oh no, it's that people were pissed off about it. They thought it was ugly.
Totally, yeah. Can we think about like what major social institutions might have been happening in France? So this is a different one. So it's the Catholic Church and Sacré-Cœur. So unfortunately, this vampire bishop or whatever looks sick as hell. So this is also from 1898. This one is depicting the Catholic Church as the vampire. So very different than black voters in America. This is an actually powerful institution. And Sacré-Cœur is built on a neighborhood that was a really revolutionary bohemian neighborhood as revenge for the Paris Commune, basically. As atonement to God for all of the godless communists taking over that neighborhood during the Paris Commune. Sacré-Cœur, big white building, gets built at the very top of that hill, and a lot of homes are demolished to clear the way for it. So this is a comic about how it's an attempt to assert sort of monstrous control over the people of France. So it's really interesting that vampires can do both of those things at this time. Vampires are in the water in the late 19th century and being used for multiple things. Sometimes they're for powerful things, sometimes they're for marginalized people. What else do we think was depicted as vampirism? And yet, like, yes, absolutely, there's like anti-Semitic caricatures. This one is not going to be that either. There's an image here with a lot of women. What do we think might be depicted as vampires? Yes, do you want a piece of candy? Does anyone else want a piece of candy? Just, yeah. This picture's from the 1920s, so a little bit later. I love this really nerdy, gangly suffragette in this anti-suffragette, I think Swiss anti-suffrage poster. So she's like silly because you don't want to think that women are too serious. You don't want to think they're too powerful. So she's sort of silly. She's got some whiskers. She also has the Nosferatu fangs, which I like. She's got maybe whiskey. I don't know what this is. Like, there's a glass of. Presumably she's drinking, I guess. But I really love her whole outfit. It's like, this is the kind of woman that will vote. Terrifying. And then earlier than that, this is not quite a vampire. She's more like a demoness, but I really love this look, and it's kind of vampire. So this is Victoria Woodhull. She is the first woman to run for the American presidency, though nobody paid attention to her doing this. But she was running on a platform of like racial equality and free love, and like gender equality and stuff. So she's holding this sign that says free love, and it's really interesting because the woman over there is for sure suffering under the burden of her drunkard husband. So she's showing her another option, but it's being depicted as bad, and you can tell it's bad because she's got wings. Okay, so then there's like all kinds of like anti-Nazi cartoons as well. This one's interesting. It's not quite a vampire, but he is sucking blood with the gas mask as well. There are also like anti-imperial vampire comics that show like the imperial power as a vampire of various kinds, like since the 20th century. I just think that this kind of gas mask, batwing, knife scale thing is really interesting looking. And then this is like also trying to make the Nazi threat look bad because it's attacking the country, but it's also trying to make it look silly. And I think silly vampires are always part of vampire history as well. It's like you want to make it appear that your enemy is someone that you can defeat. So I think the use of vampires and Nazis is interesting too. A hint with this picture. So if you know the movie Citizen Kane, you have the answer. What American figure would a communist depict as a vampire in League with Hitler? Yes. Anyone wants candy? There's candy right there. So this is a zine that depicts Hearst and Hitler both as vampire bats, which I think is kind of fun. and this is a communist scene about them lying about communism, and this is from 1935, so this is from very early in like Nazi rule in Germany. So they're silly, but they're evil, and we should defeat them with the power of the people, etc. This is going to be a more difficult one, and this is just a fun thing I want to share. Not a fun thing, but like a fact that is crazy. Where did the CIA kill people and make it look like vampires did it? It was the Philippines, yes. If you want candy, there's here, pass it back. Yeah. Yeah, so an ad executive was contracted by the CIA to come up with ways of waging psychological warfare against communists in the Philippines, and one of the things that he had people do was kill communists and drain their blood out of their body and put holes in the necks to make it look like a vampire did it, and then leave the bloodless bodies where their comrades would find them, which is totally bonkers, but it was obviously actually very scary, because if that happens and you find your friend with blood drained out, and there's also like a local Filipino vampire called the Aswang, so this was like kind of tied into what people might have grown up hearing in ghost stories and stuff as well. And this guy who decided that this was a good idea to do, he like wrote a memoir about this that you can read on Internet Archive. So like he's fully talking about the war crimes that he designed and committed, Edward Geary Lansdale. So that's where taxpayer money was going in the 50s. Which U.S. president was depicted as a psychedelic vampire in Cuban propaganda? No, different 60s president? Yes. So Richard Nixon as a vampire in 1969, I just think this poster looks cool. It's not as rhetorically sharp as some other communist posters, but you get the idea. Bad guy. More random vampire propaganda. This is from Bangladesh during the Civil War, which depicts Yahya Khan, president of Pakistan, as a vampire, because the idea is like Pakistan is extracting economic resources from Bangladesh, because it was East and West Pakistan, and then there's like a fight to create this Bangladesh, because also Bangla is being like sort of suppressed as a language, and there's like cultural differences, and there is this perception of economic exploitation between the two zones. So he's a vampire. He's kind of like a combo vampire, maybe like demon. Like there's certainly more inflections than just like Western vampire there, but I think it's an interesting caricature. Here's Gorbachev as a rocket vampire. Also not really sure what's this. He's getting rid of nukes. That's good. And then this is Muammar Gaddafi defending Libya against energy vampires, which is like another. So it's like there's the anti-imperial like kind of thing that this is referencing of like vampires are like colonists, and anti-imperial struggle is against the imperial colonists. So there's like a lot of different ways to use the vampire in propaganda, is what I'm saying. Now I'm just going to talk about vampire faces for a second. My thesis is that vampires that are like totally animal zombie raw are boring, because they have to have kind of a human element in order to be a vampire, and if they don't have that, it's not interesting. But there's like the push-pull back and forth with monstrosity and humanity. If you have a full Edward Cullen vampire, also not interesting. So what iconic vampire has two little bucktooth things at the front of his face? It's Nosferatu. Maybe you just pass around the candy? I don't know. He's charming, he's creature, he's kind of an anti-Semitic caricature, but it's somehow its own new thing as well. He's really like not human, he's like moving like this. His demeanor is outside social norms. He's really creating a whole genre, a whole visual language. He's really one of the best. What iconic vampire just beat staring and was the first actually licensed adaptation of Dracula by Bram Stoker? So which Dracula? It's Bela Lugosi. He's just going like this the whole time. And it's really Renfield who's the monster in that movie. Like he's drinking blood, but he's just kind of like he's doing that. And it really recalls the Carmilla thing we looked at earlier, right? So he's like hot, sexy vampire, and this is like different than the Nosferatu. He can turn into a bat, he can mind control people, and he can turn other people into sort of deranged monsters, but he is kind of an aristocrat, cool guy. Category Femme Fatales. What early horror movie featured a lesbian vampire who kidnaps a psychiatrist in an attempt to make him do anti-vampire conversion therapy on her? It's Dracula's Daughter, which is the canonical cinema sequel to Bela Lugosi Dracula. They were like, that did so well, let's make another. So it starts with her being like, thank God my father is dead. Now I don't have to be a vampire anymore. And then her like Igor-like companion is like, you'll always be a vampire. And then she's like, no, I won't. And so then she kidnaps a psychiatrist. And he's like, you should try to expose yourself to the thing you're addicted to. So she asks this hot girl over and is like, I'm going to draw you. And then it's the Hays Code era, so they can't show anything. So it's this girl looking more and more scared. And it just zooms in on her face as she like comes close and attacks her. And then after this doesn't work because she's unable to resist drinking blood, she kidnaps the psychiatrist and is like, cure me of vampirism or I'll turn you into a vampire. And then she's betrayed by her assistant. And it's very sad, but it's very lesbian. What vampire movie features a toxic lesbian vampire couple slowly pursuing a straight couple in a hotel? This is from the 1970s. This is Daughters of Darkness from 1973, I think. So she's gorgeous. It's a really silly movie. There is a scene where a vase falls and breaks cleanly in half, and then each half of the vase slices open someone's wrists, and they immediately die. So it has this sort of dreamy 70s look. I am unclear on what this film believes itself to be doing, like, because it's really campy and silly, and I'm pretty sure it knows that it's pretty campy and silly. So there's this, like, woman and her thrall, and, like, they're a vampire couple, and they're trying to hunt this straight couple that's lingering in this hotel too long because they're going to go meet the parents before they get married, but then, like, the guy is being really, like, cagey about whether they're actually going to go do that. And in the meantime, lesbians make their move, and they do kill the guy. The vibe of this movie is great. You should watch it with your friends. In what movie does Catherine Deneuve trap former lovers in coffins in the attic? David Bowie is there. It's The Hunger, 1983. David Bowie is there. You see he's there. She's also I think Susan Sarandon is in this one as well. What vampire movie has Keith Harington in it on Grace Jones? His Body Paint. Grace Jones doesn't have any lines, unfortunately, but it's Vamp from 1986. So if you want to see Grace Jones covered in Keith Haring art, you can watch Vamp 1986, which is also really campy, as you can tell from this poster. Category Baby Girls. Who is the best canonically trans baby girl in Vampiredom? If your answer is different than mine, I am so excited to learn about whatever it is. Tell me about that. I don't know about that.
That basically.
Cool. Is it a movie or a book?
It's a movie. I don't know if she's actually a proper vampire, but she
Okay.
can steal people and turn them into statues in her basement.
Close enough. Cool. Black Lizard is this movie?
Black Lizard, yeah.
Black Lizard, and when is it from?
1970 something.
Okay, fab. I was just gonna say Eli from Let the Right One In, because she's so small and she kills bullies. Well, I think she's a baby girl because she's a baby. She's so young. Like, yeah. Yeah. That's my category. Who is infantilized and forced to play a baby forever on stage until her evil dad and her stupid dad have a fight that results in her death? It's Claudia. And the new Netflix Claudia has replaced any other Claudia in my head. Who steals a kid's skateboard? Has anyone seen Girl Walks Home Alone at Night? She steals a kid's skateboard. And it's really ambiguous about whether, like, she's like a vengeful girl killing bad guys, or whether she's just kind of a monster because she doesn't talk that much. And I really love this vibe about her, that she's like, she comes off as quite endearing because she's like this very young looking woman who kills evil guys that are doing bad things sometimes, and then she's like dancing to music alone in her room, and it's a very vibe to watch when you're a college student and you want to feel like really deep. And then she also steals a kid's skateboard and then rides it while wearing a chador, and so the chador is like flowing behind her like bat wings, and it's cool. Category monsters, and I'm just going to talk about the lumpy forehead on some vampires. So in Lost Boys, this is like the first movie to really go for it with this sort of lumpy forehead. Have we seen? We know, so you know this thing. So it's vaguely Neanderthal. The eyes are kind of inhuman. The vibe is kind of horny. It's kind of masculine and unpredictable. And I'm just going to go into it a little bit because this is the predecessor to like the Buffy vampire look. So Vamp in 1986, which is slightly before it, also has this slight vamp bridge thing and the same contact lenses, so they're all feeding into each other. I have a theory that like Neanderthal wax models are happening more in the 1980s, and there's got to be some overlap between special effects makeup and like Neanderthal wax model people. However, Greg Cannon, who designed the Lost Boys look, said he was inspired by a water stain photograph of a tennis player with good bone structure, and then I was like, tennis player 1970s, and I'm like, this guy, Jimmy Connors kind of looks like that, right? He's kind of got the same deal. So I think it's Jimmy Connors that he's talking about, who inspires the Lost Boys vampire makeup, and he said that the makeup, the lumpy forehead, was made to make them look sexy. And then Buffy does this, which I think looks especially good when it's on women. It's that little zhuzh, it's the little something. And then related, what famous schlocky 1980s vampire movie makes like a very direct gay guys are vampires thing? Do we know? Has anyone seen Fright Night? So he has this speech, and he gives this speech to this kid who's like an outcast kid, who then enthusiastically becomes a vampire and then dies. So he's like, you don't have to be afraid of me. I know what it's like being different. Only they won't pick on you anymore or beat you up. I'll see to that. All you have to do is take my hand. This is in the context of him and this human thrall living together, and everyone thinks they're gay guys, but actually they're vampires. So it's very direct. And then the kid who gets turned into a vampire dies at length for like 5 minutes, while the vampire slayer who kills him just sort of stares at him like in horror at his like very grotesque death, as they shift between every practical effect they have for the wolf. So there's like 5 different like wolf boys as he slowly dies, and you're like, ooh, this is like really slow and long. And then this is in the same movie. At the end of this movie, this guy is not actually dead. Sorry for spoilers, but like it really changes the whole import of this whole scene, because then he's not dead. So it's like gay guys rise again. Also in this movie, so when she gets turned into a vampire, her perm comes out. And then when they kill the main vampire and she turns back into a human, her perm comes in. In Fright Night 2, they are on roller skates. They also bowl with the guy's head. I'm just going to talk about Buffy. I love the Master. He's really gay-coded. He is kind of doing Nosferatu, but naked mole rat style. I love how he kind of like has this sort of a gay guy voice. There's a very direct, like, he is grooming this child because he turns this child into a vampire, and then they get tired of that, so they just have the child vampire die. And then later they do the Nosferatu kind of like caveman combo thing with the Turok-Han in season 7. I don't like these guys because they're really boring because they just go raw. They don't have internality like all of the other vampires do, and I think that's boring. And this is during the period where it's all gets more and more zombie. But there's more Nosferatu style bald guys in Buffy as well. They just keep doing this look. They can't get away from it. So does anyone know this movie?
I forget the name of it. It's the Tarantino movie.
Yes.
From dawn until dusk.
Yes, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. But yes. So they have crazy vampires in this movie. I love the practical effects in this movie because they don't look like vampires. They're like all kinds of different things, but they're called vampires. Like the way that they make all kinds of wax additions to people's faces. This is what horror movies should be like. Some of them are lizards, some of them are fish. They're like so much going on. So if you like practical effects and you can handle some gore, it's a fun movie to watch for the practical effects. There's also just like a lot of like female sexuality as monstrosity, because like, you know, it's Tarantino. Dusk Till Dawn 2 also has the Neanderthal forehead thing going on. And then there's this beautiful hag who has a mouth in her tummy that has teeth in it, and she's only in like one shot for like 1.5 seconds. but like is doing all of this, and I think this is so fab. I think this is so great. Okay, Wet That Wolf Man. Any guesses? This is also me loving practical effects. So Gary Oldman sucks, but he has a lot of different forms. He is like old Gary Oldman, he is young Gary Oldman, he is Wolfman Gary Oldman giving oral, and then he is Wet That Wolfman. He is like, look, it's like wings and his like little malformed paws. I think this rules. I think this rules, that rules, and this rules. Like, this is a gorgeous look. This is also only in one scene, but they're just going off in every scene. They're like, what if we give him a new face for this scene? Do we know which movie has the Vampire Blood Shower Club scene? Yeah. Or I think it's just Blade, yeah. So I love this. I don't know what they're doing with the vampires in Blade, because it's like they rule the world, but they're also really stupid club kids. No one knows how their own devices work, so when Blade starts breaking stuff, they can't handle it. Like, they're just really easy villain to defeat, so it's kind of boring to me, but I love the vibe on here, and I guess sort of the implication is that, like, vampires are sort of like a toxic club kid culture, kind of. Like, they don't care about each other, they don't take care of each other. I don't know if there's any other thoughts about this, and then they, like, can't figure out what to do. I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about this, but like they have the Reapers come in, which is the same as the Turok and Buffy, and they just make them like vampires that go raw more, and you can't reason with them, and then they give them this like Stranger Things explosion mouth, and they compare it in the movie to like crack versus heroin in terms of the vampire's relationship to blood. I don't know what that implies. Blade is like not a well-reasoned movie because the whole point is that he looks cool, and that he does look cool. But I think it's really interesting because I just have this kind of sketch of like zombies start getting bigger in the early 2000s because people stop being interested in making interesting stories about tortured emotional vampires, and they're just like, what if he just went rah? And like I Am Legend used to be about vampires, and the I Am Legend short story that it's based on is about like this guy killing a bunch of people and then realizing there's a cure for the condition they all have, whereas Will Smith I Am Legend is like, I have to kill these evil guys because they're senseless and scary and bad CGI. In conclusion, this guy's stupid. Yeah, so that's my slideshow. Everyone share whatever candy you want. Does anyone want any more candy? We have this candy. Thank you for bearing with me. Does anyone have any vampire movies that I didn't talk about that you want to say anything about?
Well, you're in the shadows.
Yeah, what do you want to share about it?
I just love it so much.
Yeah,
That's all.
Not like the traditional vampire, but the series that I last by Vampire.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like a religious horror where the vampire gets mistaken for an angel by the religious community and they start worshiping it, and the vampire himself is really cool.
Midnight Mass.
Yeah, cool on that list.
Cool.
Wasn't that this actually done?
I do like that movie, yes. How do you feel it ties in to vampire horror?
I don't know. It just feels like it has vampire vibes to it.
It is vampires, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the bougie vampire of like the curse of vampire is the boredom of
Yeah.
forever.
It also, it's obviously the part that's invested in the but that's also kind of snack for the
Yeah.
Yeah. The kind of real snack is to be kind of for highlight thing.
Yeah, and I don't know
That'd be really hot.
that I agree with that argument in a piece of art, right? But I do think that she looks really good. I also like the song for some way. Yeah.
So there's an Egyptian remake of a Rocky Horror Picture Show, which kind of like for the first half of it is pretty much shot for shot. It's called Anyeb, which means fangs, but actually kind of like in the end there are also vampires in it, and there's a subplot in it that's all about kind of like social housing and kind of like new developments in Egypt, but that is kind of like a complete aside. But I just love it.
Sorry, it's a remake of Rocky Horror
Rocky Horror Picture Show, but with vampires.
with vampires.
Yeah,
And set where?
set in Egypt.
Set in Egypt.
Yeah.
Is it called Rocky Horror? Or is it what's it called?
It's called Anyeb. You can actually watch it in its entirety on YouTube if you just write Anyeb.
Cool. Thank you for telling me about that. Cool. I'm gonna go back to the start. gonna do that. Okay. And I'm gonna read a little bit from my book, which is I'm trying to sell. And then I also have a zine comic that you can buy here that I brought a few copies of. So if you want to buy my zine comic and this, you can, or one of them. If you don't want to buy a whole book and you just want to buy the zine. So this book is a lesbian vampire novel, and it is about Fawn, who is a human trans girl who hitchhikes across the country to try to find her friend Silver, because Silver has faked his own death and turned into a vampire and gone to join some vampires who have like a free blood cult in Seattle. And the other character is Rachel, who is a vampire who's been recently turned into a vampire by her mother's nemesis, Cain. And her mom is like a middle-aged vampire slayer who's like Buffy, but older. And she runs a anti-vampire slayer group called Moms Against Vampires in Seattle. And so Fawn and Rachel are both in Seattle. Fawn starts selling her blood to vampires to make rent, and they meet eventually. So I'm going to read like 2 selections that shouldn't take too long, and then if anyone has any questions, we can talk. So I'm going to read, let's see, I'm going to start from a Rachel section really early in the book. So they're staking out a vampire party, and Rachel's about to get turned into a vampire. We'd been waiting hours and had only 1 kill. And it was almost time to move back to the house when I saw one older guy walking with a younger girl. I could see from their shadows that she was undead and the guy was dinner. I staked the girl in the back as she wrapped her arms around the old guy and made for his neck. She disappeared into ash the way they do. It blew in my eyes and made me cough, which is why I wasn't prepared for what came next. The old guy, and he must have been in his 70s, hit me in the face. Hard. I fell back and hit my ass on the ground and dropped my stake, and he tumbled after me, stomping at me. I spun and struck him with the only thing on hand, one of my mom's security sister's window breakers. He was screaming, totally incoherent. He was a big guy, and he was on top of me, which sucked because we're not supposed to kill or hurt civilians at all. I was on the bike path by the bushes, and Brid couldn't see me, though I figured she could probably hear this guy screaming. Slayer, he shouted, as if this was a cause for alarm and not relief. I just saved your life, I said to the guy. That was a vampire. You killed my wife, he screamed at me. I'll kill you. In the dark yellow-black light of the water reflecting the street lamps, his eyes were wide and insane. I pushed at him, but he got his hands on my neck, which is why it was lucky that Brid ran up at that moment and hit him on the head with a wrench. She pulled me out from beneath him. We looked at his form crumpled on the ground. He was bleeding. This was a major problem, not least because vampires in the area would smell fresh blood. I'll call 911 in a second. Don't tell anyone about this, Brid said. She's always been the more decisive one. I felt a lurch, and I looked at her in horror, but I was distracted by someone else running toward us. It was a vampire, fangs out, forehead wrinkly. Sam, the vampire yelled. Sam, are you okay? It saw us and stopped, its yellow eyes glowing in the night. Then it saw Brid's wrench and my stake. Shit, the vampire said. Brid surged forward, wrench in one hand and stake in the other, and tried to stake him, but he danced backward facing us. He took out his phone and started to type. You guys are slayers, huh? Damn straight, Brid said. She started to try to get his phone, but he circled her. I was back up on my feet by now, between him and the body on the ground behind us. Well, you fucked up, the vampire said. This time, Brid got the vampire in the chest as he tried to run around us to get the old guy on the ground. He dissolved into ash. Once you know the technique, vampires are really easy to kill. I coughed again. The guy had dropped his necklace when we staked him. I picked it up. It was silver-colored, but not silver. It was in the shape of a bent bat wing, shaped like half a heart. I stuck it in my pocket. I felt my phone buzz and saw it was my mom. Where the hell are you? Get into position. Sunrise is in half an hour, and I'm going to smoke these fuckers out. We have to get back toward the house, I told Brid. Wait, we have to call 911, I said, and I paused, dialing. Brid was running ahead, so I jogged to keep up. I described the location of the body to the dispatcher. I said he looked homeless. I should have told my mom we'd been seen, then she could have made a plan. The dew was wet on our ankles as we jogged back up through the dark, mostly quiet neighborhoods to the loud rancor of the house on Bagley. We were supposed to slide into position, hidden in a bush where the vampires couldn't see us, and then prevent the ones leaving the tunnel from going inside the house, and vice versa. Brid was panting, exhilarated, and in hindsight, I should have known she wasn't thinking straight. We both lay on our bellies in the dark. I kept seeing the wrench hit the old guy's skull. I felt the boom under us as my mom's homemade explosives went off in the tunnel. I think I can start to see the sky getting light, Brid said, as we crouched in a rhododendron near the manhole. I turned to look, and that's when I saw Cain right behind us, standing on the railing of the porch. I had seen him before in pictures, but never in person this close. If you glance at him from afar, he looks youngish, semi-androgynous, short, awkwardly proportioned, his chest narrower than his belly and hips. He wears velvet blazers that look not so much like they are Victorian as they are 1970s, remembering Victorian, with really wide lapels. He had white hair flowing back from his face, and it slicked to his skull. He had pouty red lips and a thin, scraggly goatee, slicked to a chin covered in blood. As we watched, his face morphed into his ridged, fanged form. I threw a stake, but he moved too fast and landed on me, wrestling me to the wet dirt before I could get at my stake. "You won't kill us this time," he hissed. As he hugged me to him, I could see his skin up close, crinkled, mottled white like glaciers run through with red rust. His nose flared out from its center as he smelled my hair, becoming like a bat's, wide, nostrils open, curves of flesh folded down and up. He bared his fangs in my face. He had known to expect us. The vampire we killed must have texted him. "Run," I said to Brid, and pushed her, leaning away from Kane, trying to pull him off balance. She did run, turning and sprinting away, leaving me straining. I thought maybe she'd get my mom. Kane's sharp fingernails hooked into my skin, and at the same time, he reached out and pressed a button hidden in the paneling of the house, making the earth beneath us collapse. We fell into a hole. Kane's nails tore through my skin, anchoring me to his breast in the dark, dirt falling on both of our heads as we landed on hard cement. His nails grew longer, webbing spinning between his fingers, his forearms lengthening, his snout growing wolfish, teeth jutting from his top gums down into near darkness. I hadn't known vampires could do that. Red tears dripped from his eyes. "You killed my boyfriend, little one," Kane said in the dark. His voice was like a chain-smoking college girl's. "You have been taught to kill and kill. Enough of it. Look up. This is the only image you will see while your heart beats." I looked up, and in front of the moon I saw my mom, standing, holding a crossbow pointed down at us. She wouldn't shoot for fear of hitting me. Her shadow was dark, and I couldn't see her face. As his fangs sank into my neck, I thought I was going to die, though my screams died in my throat. He pressed another button, I guess, and a trap door slid slowly shut, slamming us into earthy darkness. His breath was cool, where Brid's had been warm. His lips were hot, I guess, from drinking blood. He held me there for what seemed like forever, gulping my blood, far more than 10 minutes. 15. I was dizzy in the dark. My knees were weak. Each time I tried to move, his grip tightened and his fingers were longer, sharp. "Drink from me now. Eat well. I want you to know pain like me. I hate you, but I know you. I think you want it too." He bit his own wrist hard so the blood flowed thick, and he stuck it bleeding into my mouth. I didn't want to die. I swallowed and swallowed again because there was dirt in my mouth. It wasn't my fault. I drank and came back from the brink, and that's how I became a vampire. I'm going to read one more little section. What section am I going to read? We're going to read a little exposition from Wanda. So Wanda is a butch vampire in this book. In the comic that I wrote, there's also a vampire named Wanda because I really like the name Wanda. The comic has a femme Wanda. This one has a butch Wanda, so you can pick your Wanda. Wanda's U-Haul van had a backpack on the passenger seat that she pulled off and lugged to the back before we got back on the road. It was about 4:20 in the morning. There was a couple hours before sunrise. Wanda told me we would probably make it to Des Moines before we switched off. Her face looked green in the light of the dash. Winter sunrise is slower and overcast. Like now it'd be 7 or so before I start feeling nasty. I don't think we can get much further than that. I'd say Iowa City, but that make it dodgy. I didn't have any idea where the places she was naming were. Paul came over to the side of the truck on the driver's window. He and Wanda said a few quiet things to each other through the window before he gave her a nod and tapped his forehead as if he was inclining a hat. We pulled away from the red sign back into the last part of the night. "So," she said, as soon as we pulled out. "Paul picked you up. He didn't do anything funny with you, did he? Don't think I want to drink from him anymore if he did." "Funny how?" I asked, though innocently. She gave me a grim glance. "I just want to make sure I have the right read on him. Been working with him a while. He treat you normal is what I'm asking. You're pretty damn young." "Yeah," I said. "He talked about how he has a trans niece and said that's why he picked me up." And you remind him of his niece." I don't think it was in a gross way. He just wanted to make sure other people didn't mess with me, and I guess I said I liked vampires, and he told me not to tell vampires that because it freaks them out. Wanda let out a burst of laughter. "He's okay," she said. "He's not wrong, mostly. We also need y'all. We need each other. Now, do I know for sure he didn't mean anything creepy by the trans thing? I do not. I do not." She drew out the second part of her do. How long have you known Paul? I asked. 8 years, Wanda said. Long time for a human. He's a nice tall drink. But I'm not telling you anything more about myself until you spill the beans about what your deal is. You're a teenager running away to Seattle to find vampires? Yeah, I said. I looked at the night-colored fields flying past us, next to the highway, and felt suddenly how tired and jumpy and alone I was. You just like danger? No. I felt defensive, and I was eager for Wanda to understand me and sympathize. My friend, I think he faked his own death. I think he's a vampire on purpose. But he stopped talking to me. I think he's going to live with our friend in Seattle. I took a bus, but then I thought the police might be looking for me because I ran away, so I switched to hitchhiking. Wanda's hands went a little rigid on the wheel. She grimaced a little, but she didn't seem to acknowledge the second part of what I'd said. I hate people who turn kids that young, she said. Whoever turned your friend's a shitbag in my book, just know that. You should stay away from him. I thought about this. I think it's a guy named Kane, I said, if you know of him. Not that all vampires know each other. Wanda looked away from the road at me for a second, and I grabbed the door handle as the van swerved slightly. Oh, fuck, she said. You do know him. I couldn't believe my luck. Wanda shook her head, maybe a little too vehemently. Not personally. He buys from me sometimes through another guy. He's got a whole He runs this underground vampire club, the Pearl. He loves the baby bites. There's been way too many college students turned in the last few years because of him. Combined with the gov supply drying up since 20, it's a mess in the clinics. Too many old people died, too many young people without any guidance. It's irresponsible to just turn kids. They don't know how to act. Shit's getting worse for us. Police are all excited to catch us drinking. They don't care if it's consensual or not. Then there's the Slayers. Makes everyone unsafe. Wanda scowled. How do you know Kane? This website called Tumblr, I said. I had learned to be embarrassed when saying it to adults, but wasn't prepared for her reaction. Wanda hissed through her teeth, and I saw the edge of her fang. I didn't know he ran a club. All that internet shit. Websites. I can't wait till that fad's done with. Too many baby bites coming into the scene with no experience, thinking they know shit because of the World Wide Web. I hate even having a phone. I wanted to ask when she was born, but something told me not to. What are baby bites? Wanda sighed. You're running out there like you got an expiration date. Might as well warn you. She squinted at the exit signs flashing past us. Different kinds of vampires in this world. Baby bite means baby, new. She shrugged. You know, Kane is one of the vampires who thinks we have an obligation to make more of us. He loves when young people turn. He hunts. I tried to process the implications of this statement. I thought back to the exchanges I had had with Kane. He was comfortable with Silver's passion for bloodlust, unlike other vampires who told Silver he was being vamphobic by romanticizing it. It did sort of make sense. He attacks people? He likes to persuade people who haven't given blood before. Dumb as shit. It's always a search for someone who wants it. That's why blood banks, distribution, we need them. I had to hunt back in the day, and it makes you feel gross. There's nothing pleasant about drinking from a person who doesn't want it, or who changes their mind. People scream and go to the cops. Right, I said. I thought about how it would be nice if she pulled over and threw herself onto me, the weight of her body impossible to fight against, how it might feel to have her teeth in my neck. Of course, there's the people who think what I'm doing is evil, drinking from people who want it, like Paul. She turned to me. He begged me the first time, but that's how it's gotta be. I gotta be sure someone wants it. Yeah, I said, and felt the blush in my own cheeks rise with the memory. I kept seeing her teeth when she talked and thinking about when Silver and I drank from each other's cuts. Wanda seemed absorbed in her own thoughts. A scowl furrowed her brow. I make money selling blood to people who don't want to have to deal with the government clinic shortages and the ankle bracelets and don't want to deal with live donors, she added. It's plenty of people, big cities. It's underground clinics that do the legwork. They get some from hundreds of people like me, some from suppliers in the hospitals. More people, all the time, are turning. I'm not worried about my people going out of business, but I'm worried about people like Kane making the government crack down on us. Once in a while, cops remember we're fun to kill. They go through a vamp camp, tear it apart in the daytime, we catch fire. They find a smuggling ring, make a big show on TV of having us all executed. My friend from my hometown thinks it's impossible that my friend Silver, she thinks he can't be a vampire. She says he's just dead. It's like she doesn't believe it's possible to be a vampire. Yeah, it's easier to believe, for sure, Wanda said. She seemed to consider. Why do you think he's alive? Well, I went to his grave. It was dug up. And he left this necklace on it, I said, pulling out the Batwing necklace. Wanda flinched at the necklace as Paul had. Not many people dig out of graves anymore. Why don't you let your friend make his own mistakes, follow your own path? Why you gotta find him? I just have to, I said, and then because that wasn't an answer, I'm in love with him. Wanda nodded. You're a passionate kid, she said. It was not a compliment.
I'll stop here.
So that's my book. There's a lot of queer vampire books out right now, so it's not the only one. There's a plethora of things out.
What are the other queer vampire books that are out right now?
So there's Thirst by Marina, I'm gonna mispronounce this name, Yuztuk, which is like an Argentinian lesbian vampire novel, and it's like very inhuman vampire. There's like a bunch of werewolf books out here there too. So there's like a werewolf book called The Transition that's out. It's a trans werewolf. There's Rin Chipika has like a Castlevania inspired queer vampire series. That there's 2 books of that out. There's like a vampire throuple in like a alternate fantasy world that's like I've been told it's very like Castlevania, but I read the first one, which is called Silver by Night by Rin Chipika, and that was good, even though I don't know Castlevania. I'm trying to remember the title of the one that I saw most recently at Gaze the Word last week, but there was like another like it was this one about queer vampires who want to in mass move to the moon. I think it's because there's sort of an anti-queer thing happening that we are feeling very persecuted a la vampires, perhaps, and it is feeling a little more of the moment than it did for a while. And I think there was a long enough sort of lag between vampire eras. I also recommend the trans vampire book Dead Collections by Isaac Fellman. And then one of the other things that made me write this book was there was this book called Youngblood that was about like a vampire prep school. There was 2 vampires, and there had been a vampire plague that meant it wasn't safe to drink from humans anymore, so there was like this True Blood style fake blood they were all drinking. And I read that and I was like, okay, we got lesbians, we got vampires, but unfortunately, by making them both vampires and making them not drinking human blood, you have removed the tension of what makes a vampire a vampire. So they basically are like magic, chronically ill people with sort of juice boxes. So I decided to write this book because of that book, but it is also a queer vampire book that is out. And then there's lots and lots of like, there's a queer horror anthology collection for teenagers called We Mostly Come Out at Night. That's good. There's like writings about horror. There's like the It Came From the Closet anthology, and that's like different analyses of horror movies that I really like. There's a couple really smart essays in that. There's one about Hereditary that I like in there. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
I have a question from online. Well, people in the room have a wee think. So this is from Angela. Can you tell us a bit more about how you play with the grotesque, if you do, especially with how it's been used in so many different ways across vampire media?
Yeah, so I'm leaning into the creaturey transformation thing. So the more blood that the vampires in my book drink, the more creaturey they get. If it's from like a human source, they get more monstery, and it's kind of like a power thing. They get more physical power, and then they also become more like bats or wolves or like furry combo. What Bat Wolfman is what I'm imagining. You can imagine a more beautiful bat if you want, but I am imagining Wet Bat Wolfman. And they revel in their monstrosity in that way, and it can feel good or scary depending on how chill you are with being Wet Bat Wolfman. So Rachel at one point drinks blood from Fawn's neck, and then she gets bat face, and then she really freaks out because she doesn't like having bat face. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
What's different? What do you have to do differently to be writing like young adult or writing for with a younger audience in mind? And like, how do you do it well and not patronize them?
Cool. I'm trying to not patronize them. I think I am lucky because my publisher is a small publisher and they don't do a lot of YA, so they don't have like a set of rules in their head about what it needs to look like. I do think that if I tried to write the kind of sexy blood drinking that happens in my book with another publisher, I might get pushback, maybe. Though there's also a lot of sex in YA generally, but it's like there's a certain censorship that's happening around queer stuff or kinky stuff, or like mention of like darkness in queer spaces of any kind, I think. And I think that YA has become this auxiliary publishing category to adult because the majority of people who buy it are grown-ups. And I'm trying to write books that are actually for teens, though I think that adults can read it too, hopefully. And I think YA should be about processing the things you're going through as a teenager, and adults can read that if they want to, but I hope that it's for teenagers who are working things out. And what I'm trying to write about when I write YA is like queer community stuff. So my last book that was for teenagers was about some teenagers trying to save their queer youth group by throwing a big punk rock show while one of them is having like visions of aliens. And then the show that they're trying to throw, they're really excited because this local punk rock star gets involved, but then that person starts kind of co-opting the vision of what the show is supposed to be, and then also like sort of acting weird toward them in a way that they can't figure out how to handle because there's not a playbook for it, and because no one else is telling that person how to act better, and also because they look up to this person. And I think that the thing that I want to write about is sort of interpersonal situations teens might encounter that have more to do with like community than they do with romance. Teens are experiencing romance, but they're also experiencing a whole bunch of other stuff. And if they're queer, they're coming into some kind of queer community, and it's usually in a fashion where they're figuring it out on their own. And even if it's facilitated via like a nonprofit group or something, you can't automatically believe that adults know what they're doing, and then also you can't believe that all adults are evil. It's usually adults are trying sometimes to give you something, and sometimes they're projecting on you, and sometimes they're like asking for too much from you, the teenager, and sometimes they're trying to give you everything as the teenager, and you don't want that. And I think intergenerational relations between queers is sort of what I'm trying to talk about to prepare teens for like what they will encounter in queer spaces. And to process my own youth as a queer youth in queer spaces, like with adults acting alternately like awesome and weird to me, and being really important in my life and figuring out myself. And then also like sometimes it's like a guy for whom you are a symbol of his own youth. I think that happens too. So I guess I'm trying to write for teens. A teen can tell me if I'm doing it well. You know? Yeah.
I guess kind of following on from that, do you find like you are writing or thinking overly about the book that you would have wanted, or things you would have wanted to hear as a teen, or do you think that's unhelpful to kind of center yourself in that?
That is what I am thinking about. In this case, I was also sort of trying to write for my friend Jolene as a teen. Fawn is very based on the things I know about Jolene as a teenager, because she also was like a trans girl runaway as a teenager and like having to figure things out for herself. And so I'm not saying that teen Jolene would have appreciated this book necessarily, but I am writing it with her, with baby Jolene in mind. Because like she landed and trans people took care of her, but also were bad at taking care of her because she was like mainly landing in like huge punk houses of many trans people in their 20s when she was a teenager. So crazy stuff. Yeah.
We have time for one more burning question.
There's no more burning questions. Thank you, everybody. If you have any more questions you want to say to me, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.